Excellent. So welcome to the Introductory Protocols I/O webinar. My name is Lenny Teytelman. I am one of the co-founders of Protocols I/O. I am a scientist by training, and it was actually my experience as a researcher during my postdoctoral studies at MIT, where I struggled for a year and a half to correct a single step of the microscopy protocol that I was using in yeast genetics. And then I realized that it's not a new technique after that year and a half. It's a correction of something previously published. So I don't get credit for it. And everybody else who is using that technique is getting misleading results and has to spend another year or two rediscovering that mistake. So I became obsessed with creating a central place that makes it easy to share method details. So today, we are going to go through an introduction to Protocols I/O. It will be a few slides to describe why method sharing is important, what we're trying to do, and give our history. And then mostly it will be a live demo of the platform. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. So we are recording this webinar, and we will send you a link to the slides. We'll send you a recording of the video, and for everyone who registered. If you need, for accessibility, if you need to turn on closed captioning, that should be at the Zoom control panel at the bottom. It should be enabled if you want to use it. For questions and answers at the end, we'll have plenty of time for you to ask any questions that you have, or if something wasn't clear, or if you already have questions. Please use the Q&A button not far from the closed captioning in the Zoom panel to put in your questions, and we'll get to them at the end. And finally, this is an introductory webinar, but if you're already familiar with Protocols I/O, you might, or after this one, as you're using it, every month we run different webinars, advanced one on recognition and getting credit for your method development if you're in academia, for public sharing. So take a look at the other webinars that we offer. And as you use Protocols I/O, of course, there's so much functionality. I will only show the most important, essential elements of the platform today on the introductory webinar. But if you have any questions as you're using the platform, you don't have to wait for the webinars, but you can go to the one-on-one demo link that is here on /help/demo, and you can schedule on the day and time that works for you. You can schedule a call with one of our scientists and customer support and jump on a one-on-one Zoom call where we can share the screen and answer and show you any specific functionality or answer any question you may have. So this is the agenda for today. And with that, let's get started. So, and it will be about a 45-minute webinar, approximately 35 minutes of Lenny presenting, and then we'll get to the Q&A. Right. So as a snapshot, the idea we had in 2012 with my co-founders, and we launched the platform in 2014. And at this point, there are about 1 million users that visit Protocols I/O every year. 200,000 of them are researchers that have created an account on Protocols I/O, and they sign in and create public and private protocols. And there are two sides to Protocols I/O. There is the public repository that is open access. It is free to read, free to publish, and there's over 23,000 public protocols there that if you find anything that is relevant to your research, you're welcome to reuse and build on. And then there is about 75,000, just over that, private protocols. So there's two sides. If you're sharing protocols publicly, it's unlimited public protocols. free to read, free to publish, completely open access. And the business model of Protocols.io is that we charge for private collaboration. So a lot of universities, government organizations, and pharmaceuticals and biotechs have an enterprise subscription to Protocols.io for unlimited private sharing. I'll show you how to check if your organization, if you're in academia, if you're in industry, you'll know if your company has Protocols.io. If you're in academia, there is a list that shows what are all the universities around the world that have a subscription to Protocols.io. Right? And the mission of our platform is to make it easy to share method details before, during, and after publication. So as I said, there's two sides. Most of the protocols, those 75,000, are private, so it is a workflow tool for secure and private collaboration long before you're publishing. Of course, if you're in a biotech or pharmaceutical, you are not publishing protocols. You're using it for internal collaboration and to improve reproducibility across the organization. Right? If you navigate to protocols.io/for institutions, there is a drop down there that shows you all of the universities that have a subscription to Protocols.io. You can also sign up for a paid workspace if your organization doesn't have a site license to Protocols.io. You can also directly on the website click upgrade premium workspace, and with a credit card sign up for a small team if you need private collaboration. But before I show the platform itself, I did want to highlight that there is a long history of scientists complaining about insufficient method details in published research papers. It is something that is common across all disciplines of research. Here's a physicist saying, I'm currently reading through so many papers to better understand the methods, and I keep seeing as described elsewhere. I need you to tell me the secrets without asking me to reach out. And the person says, I'm really appreciating when people detail their methods on Protocols.io and similar platforms. Here's a physicist who says, I'm reading a paper in 2017, and it says in the method section, devices were fabricated as previously described. Goes to that reference from 2015, as previously described, finds the original 2009 paper, and it just says devices were fabricated with conventional methods. So it's a dead end. And this is very common. I have bookmarked a lot of people on social media complaining about this exact problem. It would take us this entire webinar to just go through those complaints. We won't do that, but I do want to point out a quantitative rather than, these are anecdotal individual complaints about a well-known problem, but there is actually an initiative that tried to quantify reproducibility of published papers. So this was an effort by the Center for Open Science and a company called Science Exchange. It was a $1.5 million initiative to independently repeat key experiments from 53 cancer papers in top journals. And when the first results from this initiative were published, there was a lot of media attention to it. And one science journalist reporting on it wrote, the hardest part by far was figuring out exactly what the original labs actually did. Science papers come with method sections that theoretically ought to provide recipes for doing the same experiments, but often those recipes are incomplete, missing important steps, details, or ingredients. In some cases, they're not described at all. Researchers simply cite an earlier study that used a similar technique. And this is what we saw on the individual complaints on the previous slide. In the summary of this project, Center for Open Science says that 0 of the 193 experiments from these 53 papers had protocols adequately described. So this is a very common problem. It is not new. And what is also interesting about this initiative is that when researchers from Center for Open Science and Science Exchange reached out to the labs that did the work, they often collaborated, they requested the protocols, and even when the initial study authors wanted to help, they often could not find the exact protocol that was used in the paper. The student or postdoc had graduated, moved on. There were multiple versions of the protocol, and they weren't sure which one was used to generate the specific results. So long before we're publishing, we actually have a hard time, even with all of our lab notebooks and electronic lab notebooks, we have a hard time precisely detailing internally in our teams what are the protocols we're all using in the lab, which protocol was used to generate which result, and then when we publish, we're often not doing a great job of giving all of the details and protocols that someone else in our team or outside would need to repeat the experiments. This initiative is from 2000, started in 2015. I said Protocols IO started in 2014. There's been a lot of progress, but if you look at a recent paper on reproducibility from South American scientists, a lot of the same issues we had 10 years ago and 20 years ago are still problems that we experience. And what we're hoping and have been pushing for, where I do see progress, is that there is an initiative, there is a movement away from contact author for details, whether it's for code or for data. There is, by many publishers, recognition of the importance of reproducibility, and there does seem to be progress in sharing data, code, and protocols, and what funders and journals expect. But I mentioned what our mission is, and now actually instead of the slides, I do want to do a quick 15-minute demo of Protocols IO. So as you'll see, there are many, many different fields, different disciplines that share protocols on Protocols IO. We got started with most of the use in life sciences and molecular biology, but since then, we've been seeing protocols from anthropology, chemistry, psychology. So really any type of research can benefit from using Protocols IO, and we are seeing increasing adoption of it outside of biomedical sciences. And one of these 23,000 public protocols that I'm going to show right now, obviously this is a public one that I'm showing, but every protocol, it's important to note, when you create it, it starts out privately and securely. It's yours. You decide who to share it with, how to share, what permissions to give. So by default, every protocol is private, and you have to, with your co-authors, decide if and when to share it and if and when to publish it. However, the protocol view is the same on public and private protocols. So everything that I'm about to show is the same on private protocols, with the exception that on a private protocol, you also have an edit button that allows you to make changes, to go into the concurrent editor where you can collaborate with colleagues and make changes to the protocol. The protocol viewer, when you're scrolling through many of the protocols that you create or find on the platform, you will notice that these are not static PDFs. There is structure to the protocols on Protocols IO. And every protocol is dynamic and interactive rather than just plain text, HTML, or PDF. So you will often see people are adding videos inside the steps. There's structure, components, timers that people add into the steps that we'll talk about a little bit more. And importantly, you'll also see that on every single step of the protocol, there is a plus button, whether it's public or private, that allows you to ask a question on that step that will go to the authors of the protocol and anyone who is using it. So instead of asking a question just by email, where only one person gets the reply and then somebody else asks you the same question and you have to find the answer and send it to them. If you answer it directly in Protocols.io, you're sort of building an FAQ right on top of the protocol, right on that specific step. So here's a question from a scientist about this step, and the author replies. And so you have back and forth conversations that are happening right on the protocol step, right? And as these conversations happen on this protocol, there are 53 different comments. You can go into comment view and you'll see a summary of what people are discussing on this protocol. There are protocol level comments about the entire protocol, and then there are step level conversations that are happening. And as conversations happen as an author, you will frequently realize that you can improve the protocol, you can share more details, you can clarify a step so that people don't have to ask that question. And with a click of a button, you can create a new version. The original that you shared doesn't go away, but you can make a new version and will guide everyone automatically to it. And you will also notice that there is a compare button that allows you to see which steps are the same and highlights the steps that are different between the original and the new version. You can check the changes in the abstract or in the guidelines or in the steps, but it gives you a quick summary. And the other thing to note is that every protocol serves essentially as a template. So you will have, whether it's public or private, you have a copy button on every protocol that, because these are open access, allows you to take a protocol that you need if you find it on Protocols.io and click copy, make a private version of it that then becomes editable. And so while versioning is meant for the author to share the most up-to-date and the most optimized version of the protocol, to share corrections and optimizations, the copy button is something that allows you, in case you're working with brain tissue and I'm working with liver tissue, we might have small differences in how we process our sample. So for those deviations, for the tweaks, depending on the equipment, depending on the organism you study, there can be differences, right? If you're running a study with patients in Pakistan, you might be asking slightly different questions from the people that are running it in Brazil. And so that's what the forking is for. You can take somebody's brain protocol and make changes to it for liver. The same compare functionality applies to not just the versions, but the forks as well. So these are some of the main things on the protocol view. And before we leave the view, I also wanted to note that there is a run button. And for hands-on techniques, about 5 to 10% of people that publish on Protocols.io, they are sharing computational bioinformatics and other computational pipelines. But 90% of people that use Protocols.io, they share hands-on methods. And for those, the run button is quite useful. So that is a checklist app. As you're doing an experiment, you can see which step you're on, what you're doing next. If there's a timer, you can start it on your iPad or Samsung tablet as you're doing the experiment, right in the fume hood. And importantly, as you're doing the experiment, if you change anything, you can say, you know what, today, instead of room temperature, we're doing it at 20 degrees. And then you click save, and you have a record of how you performed the experiment on that particular day. So you see your progress through the protocol, you save it, you finish it, and then you can export it to your notebook, print it out, or just have it in Protocols.io as a record of how you ran the experiment on that particular day. All right, so this is the run functionality. And the last thing that I want to show on today's webinar in terms of the live demo, the last thing that I want to show is what it looks like when you sign in to Protocols.io. So if you have an account, it takes a minute to create and sign in. You will make a workspace and end up in what looks like a file manager. And this is the space where companies and university laboratories, research teams can all collaborate together, organize all of the protocols in folders and subfolders in a common space so that everyone who comes to the team or when someone graduates, the protocols are in a central location, the most recent versions are available, and you improve the internal reproducibility of your research team. And from here, you can create new protocols, new folders. If you want to organize protocols together, that's what a collection is for. But important thing on an introductory webinar is to mention that if you have existing protocols, as many researchers and scientists do when they're first new to Protocols.io, you can drag and drop a PDF or Word or Excel file or take a picture of a protocol that is on paper in your lab, and you can upload it into your workspace, click on it, and then on the right-hand side, this is a new feature this year, you'll see that with the help of OpenAI, you can convert it into the step-by-step format that I just showed on Protocols.io. Of course, this does a very good job of converting, but it is automated. It is AI. It can make mistakes. So if you're using it, it takes a minute or two to convert a protocol, but then please click the edit button and do check it for making sure that there are no inaccuracies and that the conversion got everything right. Maybe improve the format, make the tables nicer, maybe add a video. But this does save a lot of time. You can drag 10 different protocols in, click convert on each of them, and quickly turn them into Protocols.io. So it helps a lot with the initial introduction and onboarding onto Protocols.io. All right. I am going to skip the live demo part here. So those were slides that we've gone through. Just to show quickly that if you are an academic, it is very easy to publish your protocols. There is a publish button, reserve DOI. There are slight differences between them, depending on whether you're ready to share with the whole world or want to wait for your paper to become public if it's part of a paper submission. So you have different options. And of course, this increases reproducibility of the paper that you publish, but also makes your protocols more discoverable, and I think leads to more people adopting and reusing your protocol because it's in a common repository rather than just the people that can find it inside your paper. So we've done the live demo. This is a summary of all of the features and benefits on Protocols IO. And then I also want to highlight that there are a lot of people that share protocols on Protocols IO. And there are also people that share on Protocols IO. And then through our partner journals, actually send their protocol for publication. So let me show you what that looks like. On every protocol, whether you've published it on Protocols IO or not, you'll see, if it's your protocol, you'll see a peer review dropdown. And this lets you select one of the partner journals that welcome specifically protocols. So if you've spent several months getting a technique to work, it may not be, a new groundbreaking method that no one has ever thought of before that you want to publish in Nature Methods. But if you've spent significant effort getting something to work, there are journals, protocol-specific journals that would love to see you submit your protocol from Protocols IO to their journal for peer review. So again, this is for academics only, not industry, but you can get even more recognition and turn your protocols into peer-reviewed publications. So that's what this comment is about. Here's a professor from University of Adelaide in Australia who has been sharing prolifically on Protocols IO, and Professor Martelotto said that 80% of his recent collaborations have been a direct result of sharing the protocols publicly on Protocols IO. And that's because you establish yourself as an expert, you get credit for the method development. The protocols are not just discoverable by Google, but a couple of years ago, Google Scholar indexed Protocols IO. So more people will see your protocols, will see your method development, and can benefit from it. There are, as I said, examples of protocols, not just from biomedicine and life sciences. So there's more and more use outside of just biology. And before we finish up and open to questions, I wanted to say that there are now, it says over 500, but it's actually now over 1,000 journals that explicitly recommend Protocols IO and their author guidelines. So when you submit a paper, these are not the partner journals in the dropdown that I showed, but just regular research journals that recommend that you use Protocols IO specifically for improving the reporting of the method section in the method section of your paper. There are more and more funders around the world that expect their grantees to share and frequently recommend Protocols IO specifically. And as I said, there is a growing number of universities and biotechs and pharmaceuticals that have a site license, campus-wide, organization-wide license for Protocols IO. All right. And with that, we are getting close to the Q&A. Before I stop, just a reminder that you can request a one-on-one demo if you have any questions that we don't get to today. We have a lot of previously recorded webinars, or you can sign up for one of the different ones at protocols.io/webinars. And we also have a really good and in-depth comprehensive help center, and we have 1 to 2 minute tutorials that answer a lot of the questions you might have. And we greatly appreciate feedback. We have a weekly brainstorming session with our whole team where we go through all of the user requests, and we're always, even though we launched more than 10 years ago, in 2014. We are weekly having those meetings, and we're constantly working on improvements to Protocols IO. So please, please, please do share your feedback. All right. I will stop here for Q&A. And when we send the slides around, or if you have a moment, I will put this link into our chat. This is a feedback form. So just like we welcome feedback on the platform itself, we also welcome feedback on our webinars. So if you have just 1.5 minutes, we do appreciate webinar feedback, and the link is in our chat. All right, I will stop there and see if there are questions. And again, as a reminder, you have the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. So just click that and ask your question. Or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you if you prefer to ask the question. And I will say, if there are any people on this call, one question that often comes up from researchers that are at a company or university that has a license, one question that frequently comes up is, oh, what happens if our university stops subscribing? And it's an important question. And the answer is, in all of our contracts, if your university does not renew, which is very rare, but if your university or organization does not renew, we do not delete your accounts. We do not delete your protocols. Everything that you've created, all of the workspace protocols that you have, you continue to have access to them. And it is only creating new protocols. If you've run out of private space, we switch you to a free account. You can access all of your existing protocols, but if you try to create new public ones in your new private ones in your out of space, we ask you to either pay for the workspace directly or to make your protocols public before you can create new ones. But you will never lose access to all of your protocols, to any of your protocols. And then there is a question, how do I check again? Can you show again how to check if my organization has access? So I will add the link into the chat, but just to show, if you go to Protocols.io, if you go to the bottom, you'll see the link for institutions. You'll see the link. If you scroll down a little bit on the page, you'll see check if your organization has premium access, and you can see in their drop down the list of all of the organizations around the world that have a site license for Protocols.io. I'm also adding this into the chat. There's the link. I also want to say that if your organization does not have Protocols.io, and if your team does not have the budget to pay with a credit card, again, as a reminder, you can get started on Protocols.io. You can create a workspace. You can invite all of your lab mates. You can start creating protocols, but it is limited to 2 private ones. However, if you don't have sufficient funds, if you scroll down on the plans page, you will see that we have a waiver program. You fill out a short form and we'll give you premium access to Protocols IO for several months, so you can really test it. And great, the next question, also fantastic. Will Protocols IO be suitable for non-laboratory or field protocols, for example, epidemiology or clinical studies? Again, great question. The answer is yes. And I can show you, we actually have a list of many examples from different fields. As you can see, archaeology, inclusion and exclusion criteria for different studies. So you can see that people use it for devices, meta reviews, chemistry. There are many fields outside of field biology or wet lab work. And I'm also adding this to the chat. And I invite whatever your field is, I invite you to just go to Protocols.io and go into the search box and just test it. And of course, I cannot type when I'm doing a live demo, but you can see if I search, there are systematic reviews. You can see people using it for a lot of different types of protocols. There is a bias because of my personal background as a geneticist and computational biologist. There is a bias towards wet lab protocols, but there are a lot of, those 1,000 journals that recommend Protocols IO. They're not just biomedical, and so there are environmental science, more clinical. We do have clinical trials that people are sharing, pre-registration, so there is very wide use by researchers. And if you're doing research and you have step-by-step instructions, you're very welcome to share it on Protocols.io. And there is a raised hand. Go ahead. I think you should be able to unmute yourself.
Sorry, it's by mistake. I already asked my question. Sorry.
Okay. Well, thank you for the excellent questions. And I want to thank everyone who joined the webinar today. I know researchers have very limited time. So thank you for taking the time out of your day. We're going to finish the recording now. So just in case you want to ask